Hello and welcome to the second in Mind's webinar series around supporting people with mental health problems in the workplace. My name's Paul Farmer, I'm Mind's Chief Executive, and I'm really pleased that you've been able to join us today for what I think is going to be a really interesting hour of debate and discussion. The focus of this webinar today is particularly on those of you who work in human resources, in HR, but we know that people who don't work in HR, line managers and employees, have joined us today, and your contributions will be most welcome throughout the event. Our particular focus is on how organisations, businesses, public, private and voluntary sector can build good quality policies to improve mental well-being and employee engagement. And we have here our panel, Eugene, Emma and Jonathan, to tell us more about the approaches that they see really makes a difference to improving the quality of that intervention and the quality of that support for people who experience mental health in the workplace. Those of you who don't know us, Mind, we're probably Britain's best known mental health charity. We're here supporting anybody who experiences a mental health problem to get the help and support that they really need. And over recent years, we've done quite a lot of work looking at how organisations can support people with mental health problems more effectively in the workplace. And over the course of the last couple of years, our Taking Care of Business campaign has really identified a whole range of reasons, good quality business reasons, why this is a case. So we now know that 1 in 6 workers is dealing with anxiety, depression or stress. We know that from our survey published last week that work is the most stressful factor in many people's lives. And perhaps most worryingly of all, there remains a culture of silence. The stigma that surrounds the subject of mental ill health is translated often into the workplace, with an incredible 90% of people that we spoke to in our recent survey saying that when they were ringing in with a mental health related sickness absence, they didn't mention the fact that it was mental health related. So we know we've got a big job to do here. We also know that there is a business incentive for the country, for UK PLC, to address this, with £26 billion a year lost every year to the UK economy. But we also know positively that many managers really want to get this right, and they want to improve the quality of their team's mental health and mental well-being, but they often don't know how to do it. So we've done quite a lot of work looking at this as an issue, and that's one of the things we're going to look at in a lot more detail today. How open and supportive workplaces can really benefit everyone. And we know from the work that we've done, and we know from talking to many businesses and employers up and down the country, that this approach really can make a difference. Creating that idea of a mentally healthy workplace, increasing employee engagement, are two sides of the same coin. I think we're going to hear later on, particularly from Jonathan, about the approach that he's taken to really make that work. We also know that if you do look after your staff's mental well-being, it improves morale, loyalty, innovation and productivity, and ultimately that has an impact on the bottom line. So there seems to be a growing strong case for really prioritising mental health in the workplace, and for HR managers that I think is increasingly the case, and we're finding many more organisations coming to us seeking advice on how to get this right. So in the course of today, we're going to hear from our panel of experts who are going to tell us a little bit more about their approaches and also the learning from their organisations and the people they work with, to make sure that we can offer you the most helpful hints and tips for how to get this right. The chat room is live as we speak, and I can already see quite a lot of people coming in with questions, so please do get your questions in, and we've allowed plenty of time in this session to allow for as many questions as possible. So that's the format for this afternoon's event. Without further ado, let's get on with the talking, and let's hear first of all from Eugene Farrell from ACTA PPP. Eugene, tell us a bit more about the business case for this issue.
Thank you, Paul. And I just wanted to start off with a quote, actually. Work is more fun than fun. Interesting one. When I read this, I thought, wow, that really says a lot about being engaged at work. Noel Coward must have really enjoyed the work that he did to find it more fun than fun. And I'm not saying that all employees should make their work more fun than fun, but it's definitely about good engagement. Work stress is nothing new. It's not a new issue. We've been talking about this for many years. I think what is new is that the economic climate is really starting to bite now. It's affecting the workplace and it's affecting workers. And what we're seeing is people are trying to do a lot more work with a lot less, and that's having a detrimental effect upon their psychological health, their mental health, and also their physical health. Work stress affects their productivity, creativity, attendance, motivation, and ultimately customer satisfaction. And those are going to be bottom line issues for organisations. But we want to have flourishing workplaces. An engaged workforce is productive, they're creative, they're positive. So positive emotions create much more creativity, much more positivity, and employees who are positively engaged, who have a positive mental attitude, much more likely to see their employer as being much more supportive, as doing a lot more for them, and they're going to find that a much better place to work. Also, engaged employees are going to be something like 5 times more committed to the workplace. They're going to be about 1/3 less likely to take time off sick, and engaged employees are more than twice likely to be the top performers. So there's some really good cases for having engagement at the workplace. But also they need to be resilient, and resilience is about themselves, it's about the workplace, and it's about how they're supported in the workplace, as well as many of the other factors that are related to work itself. But the wellbeing agenda is very much part of employee engagement. As was mentioned earlier by Paul, they're very much connected. So engagement, well-being is the same thing, connected together, and psychological and mental health well-being is as important as physical well-being. What is really important, I think, is that culture, attitude and desire are really part of the engagement agenda. For an organisation to change, it perhaps needs to look at its culture, it needs to think about its attitude, and it needs to have a desire to change. Not just the fluffy things, but a transformational change within the workplace. And that needs a board commitment from the top downwards, so that there's a real sense of the organisation being engaged in wanting to change and being committed towards its mental well-being and its physical well-being. And these are really important factors for organisations to consider when they're looking at their engagement around the organisation. Organisations tend to underestimate the amount of mental health in the workplace. Around about half of employers believe that none of their employees are likely ever to encounter any mental health issues, and yet, as Paul said, 1 in 6 are likely to. So there's a gross underestimation of what actually happens. Also, we need to think about how HR can fit into this agenda, and HR have a very big part to play in helping managers with engagement by creating mentally healthy workplaces, but also in driving the engagement agenda and being a champion for that within the workplace and helping the workplace to transform and to change.
Eugene, thanks very much indeed. I think that really sets the scene for the business case, and particularly this idea of making sure that you've got support from the top of your organisation. And we'd very much like to hear from you if you've got examples or questions about how you can help make that happen. I think particularly for HR managers, that's often one of the biggest challenges that you might face. Emma Mamo is Policy and Campaigns Manager at Mind and is very much the brains behind our Taking Care of Business campaign. Emma, what have we learned from other organisations about what really helps?
What we've learned is that if you really want to do this well, you need to have a comprehensive strategy that involves a three-pronged approach where you promote well-being for all of your staff, you tackle the work-related causes of mental health problems, and then finally you have the policies and practices in place that mean you can support your staff if they start experiencing a problem. And obviously for HR professionals, your role within this, I think, is about if you have a strategy, how do you ensure consistency across your organisation? And how do you, I think it's really important for you to capture and share the best practice that is happening in your organisation. And then finally, it's about being there and being able to intervene and support staff and managers when they're dealing with this on a day-to-day basis. And I'll talk more about this in a moment. But first of all, I just wanted to talk about some workplace triggers. Now, we all have mental health. It's not spoken about, it's taboo, but we all have it. And we move up and down it. We're on a spectrum, and we move up and down it for any number of reasons. And since when you think about how much time we spend at work, the fact that it can have an impact on our mental health is not unsurprising. And if you look at this list of some of the things that can cause distress, long hours and no breaks, unreasonable deadlines and workloads, poor communication, poor relationships, job insecurity and change management. I think for a HR professional, it's to think about, are any of these present in my workplace at the moment? And if they are, what am I doing to manage them, or what should I be doing? So moving on to how you can make the three-pronged approach come alive in your workplace. I think when it comes to promoting well-being, first of all, it's about getting buy-in at all levels. Now, Eugene has spoken about the business case in terms of reducing sickness absence, the business case in terms of boosting employee engagement. There's also an added dimension to this when speaking with your senior team. It's also about being an employer of choice. Look around your industry and sector. Are your peers and competitors investing in staff well-being? If they are, then it's about matching them, because obviously you want to attract good people too. And if they're not doing it, well, you could lead the way and be that employer of choice. And then it's about getting buy-in from your line managers. They're going to be implementing this strategy day to day, so you need to speak to them about what they might find challenging and then see how you can support that. Is it about training? Is it about clear policies and guidance, templates and so on? And then it is about that strong message from the top. It's about them, it's about the senior team promoting the right kind of culture that invests in values in staff. And then it's also about them modelling and encouraging the right behaviours in terms of encouraging sensible working hours and lunch breaks. And then supporting flexible working where possible and having clear policies on this so people in different teams experience the same sort of arrangements. And then it's about promoting open dialogue and involving staff in how the organisation is run and what forums are available for people to raise issues, to feed into change management and so on. And then investing in your staff in terms of prioritising learning and development. That's really important to boosting employee engagement. And then promoting physical and social activities. At Mind, we have yoga, we have lunchtime walks. Last year we held an old school sports day, which went down really well with the staff, and we'll be repeating that again this summer. So it's looking at how you can build, strong teams, build cohesion. It's really important. And then it's about encouraging peer support and buddy systems. And these can be as informal or as formal as you like. Informal sort of peer support could be holding lunch and learn workshops where people share their top tips around time management, smarter working, or you could just have a space on your intranet where people share their top tips. You could then introduce buddy systems for new starters or when people change their roles. You can have something a bit more formal, such as action learning groups. At Mind, we have these in place for managers and heads of departments. So you have small groups of 4 to 5 people that meet every 6 weeks, and you bring a workplace issue that the others help you work through. And it's really useful in terms of effectively using the skills and knowledge that you have in your workplace already. And then moving on to tackling the work-related causes of mental health problems, the first step is really taking stock of your organisation's mental health and well-being. Do you already hold a staff survey each year that asks about well-being and employee engagement? If so, you might want to review the questions. I know some organisations have asked questions about, do you feel committed to the organisation? Would you go the extra mile? So they've had quite high employee engagement scores. But when they added some additional questions around, do you feel that the organisation invests in you? Do you feel supported by the organisation? They came up with some different scores, so it may be looking at reviewing what you ask and then coming up with your action plans and then reviewing them regularly. And then it's about thinking about the policies and that you have in place that interact with staff well-being. The obvious ones are around health and safety, equality and diversity, but then there's other ones around performance management, bullying and harassment. So it's just having a look at all of your policies and seeing if they are harmonised around mental health. And then it's about ensuring line managers are supported to manage the mental health of their staff on a day-to-day basis. We know that managers can often have different styles in how they approach team management, but it's ensuring that all staff get a minimum level of pastoral care. So I think what would be really useful is to have templates and suggested agendas for line managers to follow. For example, in my team, I'll have monthly catch-ups with my team where I'll ask about their general well-being, a review of the last month, what went well, what didn't, the support that I've given them to get feedback if anything wasn't helpful, then looking at their progress against their objectives, whether they've had a chance to do any personal development and they want to discuss that. So having a really holistic kind of talk about how they're getting on in the workplace. And then it's about supporting managers to promote healthy behaviours amongst their staff and managing workloads. And also considering the physical environment, you know, is it overcrowded, noise, temperature, all of these things are really important to managing stress in the workplace. And then it's about routinely publicising the support that your organisation offers and using your internal comms. Can you put posters up in the workplace around your employee assistance programme? Do you have screensavers where you could have messages, you know, beamed once a month talking about the support that's available? I know of one company that used the spare space on their wage slips to include information about well-being. So there's ways that you can think about how best you can get these messages out to all of your staff. And then moving on, I just wanted to talk about how you can support your employees. Now, if you've been promoting well-being and tackling the causes of work-related mental health problems, then hopefully your staff will feel comfortable speaking up sooner about a problem. And a really useful tool when people do talk about problems they're experiencing at work is a wellness recovery action plan, where you can explore how their mental health and their poor mental health impacts on their performance, what are workplace triggers, what are early warning signs for you to look out for, and then what are the helpful steps for you to take, and then what steps can the individual take. At Mind, we've always had these available for staff experiencing mental health problems. And then we trialled in a few teams, including my own, looking at introducing it for all staff, where you would then just talk about your experience of pressure and stress and anxiety in the workplace. And actually they're really useful to have a very clear framework to work from in terms of supporting your staff and getting the best from them. And then from the Wellness Recovery Action Plan, you can then explore workplace adjustments that you might need to put in place to support someone if they are experiencing distress. And this is very individual, but things around changing people's start and finish time, working from home or more flexible working, or changes to their workstation, can they be somewhere less busy? Obviously it's about working with the individual and seeing what they would find helpful. Okay?
Emma, thanks very much indeed. And I think there's something about thinking about the mental health of all staff that is a really powerful way of starting to address this issue. Jonathan Bowers is looks after UK Fast, and if you haven't heard of UK Fast, it's a rapidly growing internet hosting business, growing to the size of now about 200 members of staff. And so I suppose, Jonathan, you're going to give us a picture about how you've managed to address this issue of mental health amongst a growing workforce.
Yes, thank you, Paul. What we've noticed is an extraordinary thing has happened, and that the fight or flight mentality or instinct has actually entered the workplace, only not in the way that nature intended. We were given adrenaline within our bodies to escape from life-threatening situations, but actually we create that adrenaline almost every day within the work environment, whether it be because of a broken printer or because of a tete-a-tete with another employee. We miss deadlines, or we stress about various aspects of what happens within the workplace, and we create adrenaline that doesn't get used in the right way. Now what we've discovered at UK Fast is that knocks your concentration, it knocks your confidence. In the short term, it can knock your concentration for 4 to 5 hours if somebody is rude to you within the workplace. That can knock 40% of your concentration. In the long term, it hugely knocks your confidence. We've been lucky enough to learn from and seek out advice from a lot of much more successful people than ourselves. And one of the best pieces of advice that we've received is from Richard Branson, which is about giving praise to employees, not criticism. And he says that people wither under criticism, but they thrive under praise, just like a plant might with water. And it's a great piece of advice that we've taken further within the workplace. One of the key things that I'd like to look at today is the emotions that people feel and replacing those. Tony Robbins, another great advocate of positive thinking, who has helped the likes of Barack Obama through to Andre Agassi, says that we can only feel one emotion at any time. We can feel stressed, or we could choose to feel fun instead. And I think that's a really crucial message, because at UK Fast we replace stress with a sense of ownership that brings along a great sense of fun within the workplace. So I'd like to talk about those two things. First of all, ownership and the structure that Lawrence and Gail Jones, who founded UK Fast, have created within the business is, again, it's not something we created ourselves. It's something that we've looked to other people for, and we actually found within Timpson, the humble shoe repairs company that has 900 stores across the UK, and they work in an upside down management framework. So their CEO, just like our CEO now, is at the bottom of an upside down pyramid, with our customers and our customer facing team at the top of that pyramid. The most important people in UK Fast are those that deal with customers every day at what we might call the coalface of business. 73% of our people operate at that area, and we give them as much ownership as we possibly can. This has amazing results because it reduces bottlenecks, which makes them more productive, makes people happier when they're achieving more, and it empowers those people to make the decisions that they need to make every day, and that in turn grows their confidence. An interesting thing that John Timpson said was that strategists wrongly assume that all business intelligence resides at head office, and that's a big message for us, that actually the people on the front line are those that can help you grow the business. So you have to empower those people who know exactly what's going on to help you to do that. The second aspect for us, alongside that infrastructure for the business, is creating an environment that people will thrive within. In terms of doing that, we've had, I suppose, very ambitious plans. We create a workspace that feels like home. For us, you work a third of your life, you play a third of your life, you sleep a third of your life, and we want to make that third of your life at work as pleasurable and enjoyable as possible. In fact, we want to make it just like home life, because people perform best when they're relaxed. So most of our team actually walk around the office in their socks, or maybe bring in work slippers, as has been mentioned today. We also have a second environment that we take people to, which is a training centre out in Snowdonia. It's really important to us to take people out of a work environment to find out more about them, to find out what drives them, to see which challenges they're most excited about, and also put people outside of their comfort zones so they can see the ways that they can overcome challenges and reduce stress in the future. So we take people to our training centre in Snowdonia, which has a 315-acre lake and is in the foothills of Snowdon itself. We climb people up and down Snowdon, we do raft building, orienteering, archery, and the biggest thing there is to find out what puts a smile on people's faces. It's not the fastest person up Snowdon that matters most, it's the attitude that people take on any challenge that's really important to us, because that helps us understand how to motivate them and look after them in the future. People are probably the thing we focus on most, probably with an obsession at UK Fast. So much so that 18 months ago we took on a personal trainer into the business to literally work with every person, help them become healthier, help them think about ways that they can use the energies within them and look at nutrition and the ways that they look after their bodies and their own health. He's had an incredible effect, Joe has, within the business. And people now, we've got 2 netball teams, 2 football teams, we have 35 people doing the Tough Mudder later this year, 50 people doing the Manchester 10K, and there's an amazing sense of community, and it's not based around ability, it's based around everybody getting involved. We also have a team chef and a company masseuse, different ways that we can reduce stress within the business and add something extra that people really enjoy. I suppose the other major thing that we do is we find incentives and motivating people incredibly important, and we like to reward really hard work. So we have many company treats. UK Fest is a festival that we run every summer out in Snowdonia. We have use of a huge amount of fields. We put entertainments in there, we put bands on at night. Lawrence and Gail, the 2 founders, they finance the whole thing from the first sausage roll and beer that people have, right through to the last entertainment on the final day. And it's an amazing way for people to not only come themselves as employees, but bring their families with them, bring their friends, so everyone can experience, I suppose, the fun side of business. We also have a summit in the Alps every year. Last year it was the R&D team that went out to Verbier and got the chance to play hard and work hard out in a fantastic environment. And this year, just in a couple of weeks, it's the communications and marketing teams that are going out to do that. I suppose one of the big questions that we do get asked is, does it work? What effect does it have? And while we look a little bit about the effect that motivation obviously has on people, and we can see that every day in the games we play in the office, the energy we create, overall the infrastructure and the environment we've created have contributed to a business that's gone from 2 people in a back bedroom with £10 in their pocket to 200 people with our own office space and £20 million turnover last year. So I think that says a lot. The profit that the company makes is most often ploughed back into the business in order that we can develop that environment. So yeah, we're a lucky business, but I think we're lucky because we work hard at being lucky.
Thank you.
Jonathan, thanks very much indeed. And I'm just interested whether you can attribute how much of that growth in your turnover and your profit do you think you can attribute to the very creative way you manage it, you look after your staff?
Well, the creative way we look after our staff is the bedrock of our culture. It's our core values, it's our purpose as a business, and they're the things that drive people forward. So really, getting the culture right is everything behind the revenue and the turnover. So I would say you can probably attribute all of it.
Okay. Great, thank you. So it's now time to look at your questions. Please do keep them coming in. We've already got a significant number of questions for the panel to answer, so we'll get through as many as possible. And let's start off with this question of senior leadership. Marie asks, mental health isn't a priority at my company. Can you give me some advice on how to get the senior team to see this as important? Eugene, what's your top tip for this?
Good question, that one. I think it's really important that that the senior management in the organisation get to see, for example, statistics on what mental health is looking like in the workplace, not only from both audits but also absenteeism, etc., and get them involved in what the cost looks like for that for his business, so that they could do something, have it high on the agenda to do something with, but also that they get a commitment and an involvement really to driving policy and culture forward. So that's about engagement, that's about looking at programs they could take on within the workplace, and that's about being committed themselves to making change in the workplace. And that takes really some work from managers, from HR, to make sure that that's on the board agenda and regularly on the board agenda.
Emma, have we seen examples of organisations where that senior leadership really makes a difference?
Absolutely. National Grid are quite good at prioritising the mental health needs of their staff. EDF Energy have also been highlighted as best practice. BT. So there are companies that do see this as quite central to achieving their business outcomes. And I guess how you get senior leadership on board is what we were discussing earlier about the business case of, if you don't act, it will cost you. If you start being proactive, you'll reap the benefits in terms of minimising the negative and boosting employee engagement. And then also that added thing around an employer of choice.
So there's a recruitment argument, isn't there, as well as a... Have you found that, Jonathan, that it's drawing people into your business?
Absolutely. We find that more and more people coming for assessment days and interviews now are citing one of the reasons as the fact that we're a top employer with best companies, for instance. And I think the answer to this question is about showing the senior management productivity. And for us as a business, we're very lucky that right from the top down, people take this incredibly seriously. But there are statistics by the Positive Group that say that even somebody witnessing somebody else being rude to somebody, it knocks their concentration by 20% for 2 to 3 hours. Now, somebody being rude to somebody knocks that person they've been rude to's concentration for 40% for 2 to 3 hours. We all know that really people say that women can multitask, but I don't believe that anybody can. I believe that we all need to be focused on our business and on what we're doing, and when our productivity gets knocked in that way, it's bound to have a knock-on effect on what we produce. A happy employee who's engaged and loves what they're doing always produces more than somebody who feels disgruntled.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go on and look at now the question of employee engagement. And we've got a number of questions about how to engage employees. And I think this is often one of the hardest areas, especially if your organisation doesn't have a kind of culture of building that. So Mina says, we find it really hard to get employees to engage with us. We've set up group emails and social media, but we find it hard to get employees to invest in communication with us. What can we do to improve this? Jonathan, what would you do?
Well, one of the most successful things for us is food, actually. It's feeding people. Okay. We found for a long time that getting feedback from the team, because feedback's the way we've grown, both from our clients and from our team, but getting it from the team would have to involve pizzas at lunchtime, potentially, or a nice dinner at Lawrence and Gail's house in the evening. And over many an informal dinner party have we formulated new ideas for the business. So definitely giving a vested interest to people helps. We started a printout newsletter that we send out to everyone's homes and all their parents and families' homes as well. And part of it includes the Employee of the Month, which the whole team votes on. So we created ways for the team to get involved with a vested interest that they themselves may then be chosen as the person. And in a way, we're lucky we only have 200 people, which sounds like a lot, but for us it's very manageable in terms of everybody knowing everybody and everybody knowing the effect they can have on the business and the rewards they can get from the business.
And Emma, there's that balance, isn't there, between what you can do online. Social media obviously has a role to play, because many people spend a lot of their time sitting at their desks, but also that face-to-face component. How would you balance those two?
I think it's just important to have a range of ways for people to get involved. What I would be concerned about, if they are finding that people aren't engaging, what's the underlying reason for that? Now, when we talk to employers about starting to address mental health in the workplace, we would say to them, you need to get your house in order, you need to get all your policies and practices in place, you need to get your staff views, and then you need to go out and start promoting well-being, because sometimes if you start doing the promoting well-being and there are issues in the workplace, people won't engage because they will see it as tokenistic. So I think it's maybe trying to diagnose why people aren't engaging and what might be some of the barriers.
Emma, not you, Emma down there, over there, says, I think buddy schemes are a good idea. So that's another kind of way of bringing people together. Could you just talk a little bit about that? Do you think they're a good idea?
Absolutely. I'm actually an official buddy to 3 people within Mind. I volunteered to be a buddy when we had new starters coming in a newly formed, non-restructured department. I'm then also a buddy within Policy and Campaigns, our wider department, with an officer who doesn't work within my team. So that was just about kind of sharing, my expertise in terms of policy and campaigns, and then offering support outside of the line management structure. And then a colleague in another department approached me when they were promoted to a manager and said, "Oh, can I come to you with with any issues?" And I think, peer support and buddy systems are really, really important, because it's about maximising and utilising the skills and experience that you have. And for anybody dealing with a work issue, someone else has faced it and they'll have good tips. So I think they're really useful, and you can make them as formal or informal as you like. I think it's about, again, offering a range of ways.
Okay. Eugene, we've got face-to-face, food, we've got buddies. How do you think, where's the role of HR in getting these conversations going? And particularly, it might be easier to work to improve mental well-being, but inevitably people come to HR when something's going wrong. So how do we get the role of HR in terms of supporting line managers right? And Tom has asked that one of his colleagues is feeling out of control and stressed, but they feel they can't talk to their line manager about it. What can we in HR do to help? So it's kind of stuck. Sometimes HR professionals get stuck in the middle of that, don't they?
They do indeed, and I'd agree with you. They're a place where problems are brought to be resolved, and the role of line management is really important, and I'm sorry to hear that somebody can't feel that they can talk to their line management. That's something definitely for an organisation to work on, to ensure that that people feel empowered and able to have that conversation in the workplace, particularly with their line management. But I think, you know, when these situations are existing, then HR has a role. You might want to look at how you can support people with their occupational health service, for example, is a good place to bring people to and to help them. Or if they have an employee assistance program, that might be a good suggestion that they can confidentially go and seek some support. If those don't exist, then HR can champion the role in trying to get those into the workplace to support the organisation and help move those forward, as well as training line managers. But it's a really, really important role in training line managers beyond their technical ability to their more softer skills, so that employees feel, yes, I can talk to my line manager understands, and my line manager will do something to help me and support me.
And in this kind of circumstance, would you encourage, do you think HR teams should play a role in bringing the employee and the line manager together? Or is that, should they be supporting the line manager to make that first step? How do you get that balance right, do you think?
I think that's a really important part of the organisation, is you know, empowering the line manager and helping them with their skills to do that. And I would suggest that, yeah, bring them both together, support the line manager to support the employee, but not necessarily take that situation over, so that then the line manager is not doing that role and is not really learning by doing that particular type of support. They can be supported through this one, almost like a buddy, like you were talking about, and then they'll feel more confident to support the next situation that they see.
And the other kind of tool in the toolkit for HR staff is often the idea of a reasonable adjustment, being able to offer staff a reasonable adjustment. Somebody who has a mental health problem qualifies for that.
Yeah.
When's reasonable?
That's always a difficult one to measure. I think that organisations need to look at what the employee can do, not what they can't do, and start from that and move forward, and do everything in their power in terms of reasonableness. The test of reasonableness is very difficult. You can't say really maybe definitely what's reasonable, but the organisation doesn't have to change everything, so the employer doesn't need to feel threatened, and the employee actually can feel having a dialogue about what I can do and what will work for me, and having that two-way conversation will enable a reasonable adjustment to happen that both parties can be happy with.
And that plays in, doesn't it? So, you know, Jonathan's point about you know, accentuating it, focusing on the positive, what people can do. Emma, we've got some examples of good quality reasonable adjustments for mental health.
Yeah, I mean, they can be really simple and very individual. I mean, I know of one person who experienced anxiety who just said to her boss, I really need you to say thank you after I do something, and to smile at me and say good morning, because if you don't, I worry I've done something wrong. Someone else who took their lunch break in free 20-minute slots over the day, so they could take time to manage their mental health and take time out when they were feeling a bit under pressure. So that, again, they're really cost effective, but it's just having that conversation. Some people also, when they're feeling under pressure, can find it hard to prioritise their workload. So I know that when I'm feeling a little bit under it, my manager will put in place fortnightly catch-ups in between our monthly catch-ups, and it'll be a kind of doctor's surgery. Right, what is anything you're finding challenging? Can I support you with this? Right, you know, and she can help me kind of action through some of those things. So there's things like that are really, really useful and really effective.
Great. So that was Tony's question, asking about how you can help start with reasonable adjustments, and that also links to the initial conversation about mental health and how do you start to talk about it in the workplace. I mean, Jonathan, do you talk openly about mental health? Do you talk about well-being, or are you really, you know, using different language, some of the to encourage people to think about this?
We believe that there doesn't need to be a divide between the workplace and the home. So therefore, any conversation that an employee has with somebody else, maybe their manager or another colleague, can be a personal conversation, can tackle difficult issues. We actually made sure that no one manager looked after more than 6 people within the business, in order to make sure that everybody has the space and the time to take on board the challenges that their teams face. And we look at ways when somebody does bring a challenge to us that might relate to depression or stress or any other mental illness, that we find the best people to help them work through that challenge. Quite often, our personal trainer Joe, his background is not just in personal training within gyms, but it's in personal development as well. So he very much acts as a well-being champion within the business.
Kind of super buddy.
And yeah, because often it's much feels safer for somebody to go to somebody outside of their own department to talk about their challenges rather than bring them up within that environment. However, we've created the environment where every manager is receptive to that. We actually psychometric test everybody that comes into the business, and in terms of managers, we look for people with an incredibly high caring gene. We don't, managers in our business wouldn't make it in other businesses, but as a manager, because they may not be demonstrative or loud or pushy enough in some ways, but they care about their teams and they nurture them.
Okay.
Well, no, I was just going to say that O2 actually will support staff with developing an action plan when they're dealing with a home issue. So they take quite a holistic view. It's not then for the line manager to act upon it, but it's to then support the person, because obviously home issues can have an impact on work issues. So they take quite a positive approach to that.
We've got a great question from Jamal here. He says, a line manager at my workplace has started to performance manage one of her staff. That member of staff has now told her that she's been feeling really stressed. What should we do? Eugene.
Well, that's a really good question. That for an employee, when they're being performance managed, it is stressful. There's a much more focus on what they're doing. There's much more focus on how they're doing things, and that can feel a very kind of pressure point at that particular moment in time. I think it's important for the line manager to understand that and to set out very clearly what the expectations look like for the individual, how those are going to be met. So that's very open and very transparent. And also to understand that the employee is going to feel anxious, is going to feel stressed about this, and maybe, as part of that management is to give them that little bit of space to allow them just to be able to work in the way that they're going to work, but be realistic about what can be done and what can't be done, and make it very, very clear with very clear kind of points along the way, so that the milestones can be measured and the employee's got things to aim for and things to work towards. But don't feel so great, that it's this huge big thing to change, that it's a series of steps to get to where that they need to get to, and not one huge thing which can become overwhelming.
And there's a balance, isn't there, between the quality of the policy and the quality of the line manager, and really getting that right. So
Yes.
you need a good policy and good line management to provide that right kind of balance.
Yeah, the policy kind of sets the rules as maybe to how you can follow, but how those are done and how the manager might implement that and work with it. In a good organisation, they'll have quite a lot of leeway to achieve what they need to do and to support the employee. And that's not about getting rid of employees from the workplace. That's about making sure that their performance is the right performance for that organisation, and it's got to be better for them and the organisation in the long term.
Emma?
Well, also, from the question, it's not clear if they were experiencing some stress or pressure before the performance management started. And I think sometimes poor performance and experiencing a mental health problem, the lines can get blurred. So I'd want to also explore if this was an issue that led to the underperformance, and then it's about looking at what support you can put in place to offset that. So then you can also look at their performance as well.
And you must have employment performance issues in UK fast occasionally.
Yes, we do. But I suppose we look at it a slightly different way. First of all, I totally agree that transparency and a very positive way of looking at how to improve that person's performance is the key to making it work. But we have a philosophy that you get the right people on the bus, and then you can move them into different positions. So actually, if somebody's not performing in a particular role, it might be that role just doesn't inspire them enough, or that they've hit their challenges there and they want a new challenge. So we're constantly looking at ways to move people around the business. There are people in the company who joined 6 or 7 years ago and have had 6 or 7 roles within the business, and they may not necessarily be promotions. They may be just a different change of perspective, a fresh new look at a different skill, but something that helps them to keep developing. I think the biggest performance issues happen when people start to feel stagnant and they don't feel as though they're developing themselves.
Okay. we're coming towards the end of this webinar, so thank you very much indeed for all the questions that you've submitted. I'm going to put our panel on warning to answer Daniel's question as the last question, which is what would you say are the top tactics employers can use to create a mentally healthy workplace, and how can HR take the lead on this? So I'd like the panel to have a quick think about that before I ask them to answer this. If we haven't been able to get to your question, please do email them in to work@mind.org.uk. And in addition to that, you might like to take advantage of a number of these additional forms of help and support, including quite a wide range of free resources that are available on our website. And if there are issues that you might want to raise or find out more about, then our e-newsletter is going to be providing you and many hundreds of people who have already signed up for it with hints and tips throughout the year in terms of how you can improve your business's workplace in the context of mental well-being and positive mental health. There are of course huge numbers of issues that we just haven't had time to get to this afternoon, but you'll be able to find lots more of that on the website and through the e-newsletter. In addition to that, if there's any issue where you're not sure about a particular mental health issue or the nature of it, then Mind's website is a hugely valuable source of information about different mental health issues, about what rights and entitlements you might have, both from an employer and an employee point of view. And we know that particularly in this environment, that's something that often can act both as a help, but also can sometimes be seen as a barrier in terms of really progressing a positive, mentally healthy workplace and mentally healthy environment. So back to the panel for some last thoughts. Jonathan, your top tactics.
Okay, well, I would say that HR or people, as we prefer to call it, are they're the guardians of the culture. So they're the people who are most responsible for making sure that people live their business life in the way that's similar and symbiotic within the whole company. So I think core values are one of the crucial ways to do that, and I think if a business doesn't have a set of core values, whether they're aspirational or truly all embedded within the business, they need to create them. Our core values are being supportive, passionate, professional, dynamic and innovative. And within that, one of the crucial ones for mental illness is supportive. And we employ on that basis, and we promote internally that people should support everyone within the company. And I think you can gear your core values towards adding support in well-being.
Emma, top tactic?
Absolutely. I was going to say workplace culture, because you can have policies in place. If they're not enacted, they might as well not be there. If you want to ask about mental health and people aren't comfortable speaking, you won't know what the issues are. So for me, culture is everything, and it is HR's role to normalise it, to get it on the agenda, to review it, have action plans and so on and so forth, and really support line managers on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, absolutely, it's key.
Eugene?
Well, I'm going to go with line managers, and I'm going to go with education and training, actually. If there's a lot of misinformation about mental health, stigma still exists, and I think if line managers understand mental health more, understand what to look for and how to support people, then they're going to be much better placed to have a mentally healthy workplace.
So there you have it, some tactics and top tips from our panel, but also some really helpful ideas about how to create more mentally healthy workplaces. I think this has been a really interesting and helpful discussion, and very much like to thank all of you who have contributed to this webinar, and we're very much looking forward to seeing your feedback. If you want to share this webinar, or indeed the one that we held last week, please do email it round to colleagues. This webinar will be available in a couple of hours' time for future viewing, and we're very keen to ensure that some of the messages reach as many people as possible. So please do that. That's absolutely free of charge, and we hope that the messages can reach far and wide. You wouldn't have necessarily thought that in a conversation about mental health in the workplace we would have had so many references to fun, but I think one of the key messages that I've taken out from this session is that there are many ways in which positive mental well-being in the workplace can make a huge difference, both to the productivity and to the effectiveness of the organisation, but also it creates the right climate, the right environment for those people who may be encountering mental health problems to be able to thrive in that positive working environment. So thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you to our panellists this afternoon, and we very much look forward to hearing from you over the next few months. Thank you very much.